Today, with Sean Manaea signing that 3-year, $75 million deal with the New York Mets, all eyes are on the Sasaki sweepstakes. Are we closer or further away from signing the Japanese sensation? We're going to talk about that and the pitching rotation for the 2025 season as it stands right now on this edition of Mets Digest. What's going on, everybody? Happy holidays. It's that Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, New Year's time of year. I'm Flobo Boyce, and thank you so much for riding with me as we try to sift through the off-season, hot stove, whatever you want to call it, and see what's cooking up. Get it? Myself alongside Mike D'Angelo, thank you so much for checking out the channel. And so if you are watching for the first time and you haven't already, do us a favor, like the video, subscribe to the channel, tell a friend about the channel because we are growing this brick by brick and over 3,000 of you knows what's up. So, like I said before in that little teaser image, as it stands right now, we have a sort of rotation for that 2025 season, and it is kind of a hodgepodge. In a good way, I think we have some improvements, but definitely some room to improve with Sean Manaea, my tribal chief, re-signing this week. And of course, you have Kodai Senga and David Peterson in the mix. David Peterson really did acquit himself pretty well last year. Kodai Senga had a down year, but now it's time for his redemption arc and the acquisitions of Clay Holmes and Frankie Montas. And we know that Frankie Montas kind of fits in that Severino mold of being a reclamation project, quote unquote. And Clay Holmes, during his press conference, is all about being a starting pitcher. And you do have some of those in the rotation, kind of in the rotation of Blackburn, Channing, and McGill. Those have either played for us last season or just being recently acquired. They will all be fighting for a spot. I'm actually curious to see how Paul Blackburn acquits himself. He had that really freak injury, that spinal leak last season. Hopefully he has a little bit of an upside. Now, even though it's the offseason is still going, it's not done. There is still time for other deals to be signed, but I haven't really seen anything in the past week and a half that was going to link the Mets with, say, a Corbin Burns. And so the next hottest prospect is Roki Sasaki, the young Japanese pitching sensation who is basically going to be acquired for international pool money in January, which means theoretically it's a 30-team dash to see who's going to sign him first, because money isn't much of an issue. There's a maximum cap on how much you can spend on an international free agent. I think it's a little less than $7 million, or about that side, and so almost anyone can spend. And not only do we have big powerhouses like the Dodgers and the Padres that were linked to Sasaki, there are some teams out there we really weren't considering before, like the Athletics, right? They signed Luis Severino to the biggest contract in team history, and they do have to raise their payroll in order to avoid a grievance from the Players Association. So while we try to figure out what the ranking system of it is, we do know the Mets met with Sasaki's camp over the past couple of weeks. The question now becomes is what about the other teams who are in play? And what was interesting to me was that we had a bit of a, not a breaking news, but kind of a surprising news early in the week that the Rangers, a team that wasn't even on my board, met with Sasaki's camp. And we also got some updates from the Philadelphia Phillies on the opposite, not being invited to the party. Dallas Morning News contributor Evan Grant really puts this on a button. Says this one comes from General Manager Chris Young of the Texas Rangers. He says, quote, "We really enjoyed our time, but that's about the extent of anything I will say on that today." When Young was asked about whether or not the Rangers met with Sasaki's camp in detail, this was the Monday of Christmas week. Others have not been as fortunate. Philadelphia Phillies president of baseball operations, Dave Dombrowski, said last week that his team had sent info to Sasaki's agent, Joel Wolfe, about setting up a meeting, but added, quote, "We have not been invited to talk to him at this point." Now, the Phillies and the Rangers are kind of interesting because they're both in the same kind of camp, came into the 2024 season with expectations. And you can argue the Philadelphia Phillies had more expectations because they had the talent on the roster, but then the Rangers were the defending champions. Both of them didn't really go that far in the playoffs. In fact, the Rangers didn't even make the playoffs last season. But the idea that the Rangers got the meeting and the Phillies, as of right now, did not was pretty interesting. And the thing is, that isn't the only team that has their hat in the race. The Boston Red Sox, a team that really added to its pitching core with that signing of Walker Buehler this week is looking to add Sasaki as well because they have a chance to be on the upswing in 2025, especially if Lucas Giolito comes back healthy from that down year last year. On the subject of the Boston Red Sox, this is actually Craig Breslow, who is actually the baseball head honcho over there, and thanks to Connor Ryan from Boston.com, hat tip for quoting or getting the quote from the Boston Globe when it comes to this. Quote, this is from Craig Breslow. Right now, we do not have a meeting scheduled. That's the Red Sox with Sasaki's camp. But I don't know that there's any finality to that. So it looks like there's some kind of wishful thinking there. Quote, we've obviously become engaged and would welcome the opportunity to participate in the process and hope that we'll have the chance to do that. And so, as of right now, as I record this, the Yankees, the Mets, and the Cubs have met with the camp, and the Giants of San Francisco have been rumored to do that as well. Some heavy hitters, like the Red Sox and the Phillies, have not been able to have that meeting as of yet. So this really puts into perspective that it really truly isn't a 30-team mad dash. Some teams are being invited to the party, some teams are not. The Padres are still the big question mark for me. I know there's always talk about having the Padres being the core, the New Japan core around Yu Darvish, as he's been trying to recruit Sasaki to the team, whether or not they can sustain him with their budget. But if I was a Padres front office, I would, because frankly, international free agents are pretty cheap at that age. Sasaki is less than 25 years old. But David Stearns has always said, when he got the job as president of baseball operations, that he's going to let the kids play. And that could be infield position players like Luis Angel Acuna, but definitely you have a couple of prospects in the system who are ready to go. And we saw a little bit of that in the Futures game last spring. We saw a little bit of that in the Syracuse run. If you have MLB.tv, sometimes you get access to some of the games. And so when asked about whether or not there may be a chance of some of the prospects being called up to the show, Joe DeMaio, who's actually pretty well known in ranking the Mets development system and giving an inside rank of what our prospects are, had this to say about a pitcher who may be our young gun in the mix, not named Sasaki. Check this out. Joe DeMaio writes, quote, the biggest impact pitcher in 2025 likely to be my number 2 prospect in the organization, Brandon Sproat. Interesting. AAA does pose more of a challenge for pitchers as they often facing veteran hitters and are at a level that uses a different ball. Brandon Sproat did struggle mightily after being promoted to Syracuse with a ERA currently north of 7. Sproat will have to refine some of his secondary offerings to clean up some of his in-zone command, but he possesses number 2 type starter potential, and I think he could force the Mets' hand in the first half of 2025. Number 2 starter potential. Now, the most hardened Mets fans were probably saying this when Manaea got signed. Great, we love it, but we need one more. We need 2 more. We need 1 more. We need 2 more. And I know Senga is a question mark, but if you have a prospect who potentially could be 2, even if they become a number 4 option, this is actually an embarrassment of riches. Yes, there is no brand name as of right now, like the Corbin Burns, right? Like, or even the Jack Flaherty's, which is kind of interesting comparing Burns to Flaherty, but you get what I'm saying here. But let's say everything happens at 80% clip. Let's say you do have someone like Brandon Sproat who's ready to go. You do have one of the acquisitions like Paul Blackburn or Channing ready to go. Maybe if we even acquire Sasaki. All those options put this rotation, as weirdly as we've seen it assembled by part, actually stronger than last season. Severino won't be a part of the mix. Quintana has not made an official decision, but more than likely will not be part of the rotation as it is right now. These are all improvements. The question becomes there's 2 questions. One, is it stronger than last season? Can it go further than last season? Will we have more gas in the tank than last season? And 2, do we still try to pursue Sasaki? And I would say, yeah, duh, why not? But if there's more teams in the mix that can offer things like geographic advantages, more teammate advantages, facility advantages, it may not be worth it to put all that eggs into one basket. But I'm dying to hear what you think below. So we have some information about the teams that got the meetings against Sasaki's camp. We have a bit of development issue on Brandon Sprout. You can see that he could be possibly in the mix for 2025. And don't forget, we have so many acquisitions on our own between the end of 2024, like Paul Blackburn, and even the newer ones here, like Clay Holmes. Maybe not. We have some of an insurance policy. You hit the end of the video. Let me know in the comments below. It is crazy times to be a Mets fan. An embarrassment of riches? Us? I mean, that would never happen on the Wilpon. That's right, I said it. Let me know in the comments below. I read all comments, positive, negative, somewhere in between. It means the world to me if you write down a couple of words of encouragement or even discouragement. It's all good it's all good on my end. My name is Flobo Boyce. You're locked into Mets Digest. I'll be back sooner rather than later. And of course, until next time, it's LGM to the bitter end.